The Caltharex delegation ship descended over the ruins of Fort Resolve like a falling moon, its hull humming with a resonance that made human teeth ache. Jack Doran stood at the perimeter checkpoint, rifle slung, watching the vessel settle onto scorched earth with the eerie precision of a species that had never lost a war it started. Beside him, Emma Reyes adjusted the strap of her sidearm and muttered, "Third contact this month. They keep sending different envoys like we're going to answer differently. Maybe this one'll be smarter," Jack said, though he doubted it. The Caltharex were not smarter. They were, as a species, spectacularly convinced of their own superiority, and this particular envoy, a tall, chitinous being named Vorn Kesh, draped in ceremonial plating that shimmered faintly with directed energy capacitors, descended the ramp with the gait of someone who already considered the negotiation won. "Humans," Vorn Kesh said, voice modulated through a translator collar into something that dripped condescension even through the mechanical filter. "We have observed your species for cycles. Your technology is a curiosity. Chemical propulsion, combustion engines. And these," he gestured at the rifles the soldiers carried, "these firearms. Devices that require little metal casings, packed with powder, that must be reloaded. Is this correct?" Jack didn't answer. Emma did. "That's correct." Vorn Kesh made a sound that the translator rendered as laughter, a wet clicking noise underneath. "Our disruptor arrays draw from internal capacitance. They do not run dry. They do not jam. They do not require a soldier to fumble with a little box of bullets in the middle of combat, praying his hands are steady enough under fire." He turned, addressing the assembled human officers with theatrical pity. "Your guns need bullets. This is your paradigm of war. A weapon with a leash length of 30 rounds, tethered to logistics chains, factories, supply convoys. We simply point and end." A ripple of quiet anger moved through the assembled soldiers. Colonel Ashworth's jaw tightened, but he said nothing because the treaty terms were still being negotiated, and antagonizing an envoy who represented a fleet capable of glassing the eastern seaboard was not currently on the agenda. But Vorn Kesh wasn't finished. He gestured toward the tree line, where a training exercise had been arranged, ostensibly to demonstrate compatible force postures for the treaty's mutual defense clause. A full squad of Caltharex shock troops, 9 of them, stood in polished formation near the ruined chapel at the edge of the base, their disruptor rifles humming with idle charge. "Let us demonstrate the gap," Vorn Kesh said. "Your soldier, the one with the magazine-fed weapon, against my squad, in the simulation chamber. Non-lethal charge, of course. We are not barbarians. But it will settle, for the record, whose paradigm is superior." Colonel Ashworth's eyes flicked to Jack. Jack didn't wait for the order. He stepped forward. "I'll go." Emma caught his sleeve. "Jack, it's non-lethal," he said. "And somebody's got to show this thing manners." The simulation chamber was a repurposed hangar, its walls lined with dampening fields that would turn any weapon's lethal output into a stinging, disabling pulse instead. 9 Caltharex troopers filed in, their disruptor rifles throwing faint blue light across the concrete. Vorn Kesh stood behind a viewing pane with the human officers, practically vibrating with anticipation. "1 magazine," Vorn Kesh said through the intercom, amused. 30 rounds, yes? Against 9 of my finest? Even if every shot finds a mark, you will run dry before the engagement concludes, and my soldiers will simply advance and overwhelm you in the reload window. This is the fundamental flaw of your design." Jack checked his rifle. "Standard issue, 30-round magazine, safety off." He said nothing back. There was no point explaining ballistics to something that thought firepower was measured purely in duration of beam. The chamber lights dimmed. A klaxon sounded. The Caltharex advanced in disciplined formation, disruptors raised, moving with the confidence of soldiers who had never faced an opponent who understood the difference between rate of fire and accuracy of intent. They expected Jack to spray and panic, the way their simulations had modeled human infantry doctrine from decades-old satellite intercepts of untrained militias. Jack didn't spray anything. He moved to a support pillar, exhaled, and put 3 rounds into the lead trooper's chest plate in under a second, a controlled double tap followed by a confirming shot, textbook and unglamorous. The trooper's disabling field lit up, and he dropped, disruptor clattering. The formation faltered, just slightly, just enough. Jack was already moving, shoulder rolling behind a second pillar as a disruptor bolt scorched the space he'd occupied a half-second earlier. He came up firing, 2 rounds each into the next pair of troopers, exploiting the gap where their formation had bunched trying to compensate for their fallen comrade. 6 shots, 2 more down. He is wasting ammunition, Vornkesh said behind the glass, though his voice had lost some of its earlier lilt. Emma, watching beside him, allowed herself a small, humorless smile. He's not wasting anything. The remaining 6 Caltharex tried to spread out, tried to bracket him with converging fire, the way their tactical doctrine, built for an enemy that didn't understand cover, dictated. But Jack had grown up in a world where every engagement, every drill, every hour on a range had drummed one lesson into muscle memory. Ammunition is precious, so make every round count. Where the Caltharex trained for volume, humans trained for economy, because humans had spent centuries fighting wars where supply lines could be cut, where a wasted shot might mean a dead soldier tomorrow. Necessity had forged a doctrine of brutal efficiency. He put down the 4th trooper with a shot through the gap in his shoulder plating. The 5th, sprinting to flank, took 2 rounds center mass without breaking stride until the disabling charge caught up with his nervous system and folded him mid-step. 11 rounds spent. 5 troopers on the ground. 4 remaining, and now, for the first time, hesitating. They're waiting for him to reload, Colonel Ashworth murmured. That's their whole model. Wait out the magazine. Vornkesh said nothing. But Jack had 30 rounds, not 11 spent from some hypothetical spray-and-pray fantasy the Caltharex had wargamed. He used the hesitation. He closed distance instead of holding it, because closing distance meant the remaining troopers' wide formation training became a liability, meant their disruptor's longer charge-up cycle between full power shots became a window he could live inside. 3 rounds into the 6th trooper. 2 into the 7th, 1 grazing, 1 true. The 8th got smart and dove for cover. Jack put a round through the gap in the barricade he thought would save him. The 9th trooper, alone now, raised his disruptor with visibly shaking hands and fired wide, panicked. Jack didn't waste theatrics. 1 shot. Center mass. Down. Silence rang through the chamber. Jack ejected the magazine, checked the count out of habit more than need, and safely slung his rifle. 19 rounds spent. 9 Caltharex on the floor, groaning, disabled but very much alive, staring up at the ceiling in the particular stunned silence of soldiers who had just had their entire operational doctrine dismantled by a species they'd been mocking 20 minutes earlier. Behind the viewing glass, Vornkesh's mandibles had stopped clicking entirely. 11 rounds remained in his weapon. He finally said, quietly, to no one in particular. Emma stepped up to the intercom, arms crossed, and didn't bother hiding her smile this time. That's the thing about a magazine, Vornkesh. It's not a leash. It's a budget. She nodded toward the fallen troopers being helped up by medics. Your soldiers trained to survive a wall of fire. Ours trained to never need to build one. You measured us by how fast our guns run dry. You should have been measuring how rarely we miss. Vornkesh said nothing more. He turned from the glass, plating rattling with something that wasn't quite ejection but wasn't far from it, and walked back toward his shuttle without another word about paradigms, or leashes, or the supposed curiosity of chemical propulsion. Jack shouldered his rifle and walked out of the simulation chamber, and if he allowed himself the smallest, quietest grin as he passed Emma, neither of them mentioned it. Some lessons, it turned out, only needed to be taught once.